My mother-in-law tried to steal my 5-year-old to hand him to my husband's golden child brother because he deserved a proper family and his wife couldn't have kids. When my husband found out, he didn't shout. He did this. The next day, their lives started to unravel. When my mother-in-law visits, it's not a visit. It's an invasion with luggage. Matthew warned me earlier that day like he was announcing bad weather. She's coming for a couple of nights. A couple of nights, I repeated. So, 2 sunsets and a full psychological demolition. She's my mom, Lauren. And I'm your wife. I didn't sign up for a live-in heckler. He tried the calm voice, the one he used with customer service reps and our toddler when she decided socks were an act of violence. We'll be fine. Sure. And sharks are just enthusiastic swimmers. The thing is, this wasn't new. His mom had been at war with me since the day she found out I existed. She didn't even hate me in a creative way. It was the greatest hits on loop. I was a gold digger. I was cheating. Ethan wasn't really mine. Emma wasn't really his. Matthew was too nice and therefore doomed. She also had a bizarre fixation on antlers. She loved hinting my husband had them, like she thought humiliation was a family heirloom. Matthew's dad never joined in. He was quiet, gentle, the kind of man who apologized to furniture when he bumped into it. He missed the kids. He missed birthdays. He missed everything because his wife ran the family like a gated community. And Matthew? Matthew had spent his whole life being the other son. Ryan, the older brother, was the golden child, the one who was going places, the one who could do no wrong. Matthew was the spare. His mom had never said it like that, of course. She didn't need to. She'd just say things like, Ryan always knew how to handle life, while staring right at Matthew as if he was a stain. So when she texted him, I'm on my way. I'll stay over. It wasn't a request. It was a command in emoji form. I told Matthew one condition. If she was coming, the kids weren't staying. My mom picked up Ethan and Emma after daycare, took them home with her like she was evacuating puppies before a flood. Ethan, 5 years old, all dark hair and serious eyes, asked if Grandma was being mean again. Emma, 3, curls everywhere, just waved and said, Bye, Daddy, like she was leaving for college. I stayed late at work, not because I had to, because I didn't want to walk into my own home and feel like a guest. By the time I got back to our apartment in Columbus, the hallway smelled like someone's burnt dinner and stale carpet. Normal building stuff. Ordinary. Inside my apartment? Quiet. That was my first mistake. Thinking quiet meant peace. I shut the door softly, slipped off my shoes, and headed down the hall. I wasn't trying to spy. I was trying to pee. Then I heard my name. Not Lauren, honey. Not Lauren, hi. The way people say your name when they're sliding a knife under it. Lauren, my mother-in-law said, like it tasted sour. I stopped. Right there in the hallway, bag still on my shoulder. The living room was around the corner. I couldn't see them, but I could hear them. Mother and son. Talking in that low, conspiratorial tone people use when they think they're clever. And then she said it. I'm telling you, you're Lauren. She had Ethan with Ryan. My stomach dropped so fast I swear my body forgot how gravity worked. Matthew's voice came out tight. What are you talking about? Oh, don't act stupid. I saw her with him. I knew it. She trapped you. First she tried to ruin Ryan's life, and now she ruined yours. Matthew made a sound, half disbelief, half anger. She was pregnant when I met her. You know that. That's the point, she snapped. She needed a man. A good man. A gullible man. I didn't breathe. I just stood there, listening to someone rewrite my life like she owned the copyright. And then she pivoted. Not back to insults. Forward. To a plan. They can't have a baby, she said. Ryan and Madison, years of trying. Nothing. And you know Madison's father, he's not going to wait forever for grandchildren. My brain snagged on the name Madison, Ryan's wife. I'd never met her. I'd seen one photo once, years ago, Glossy hair, perfect smile, the kind of woman who looked like she'd never had to beg a landlord for an extension. My mother-in-law continued, voice rising with excitement like she was describing a bargain deal. So why should they suffer? Ethan is right there. He's old enough, he's healthy, he's already potty trained. No diapers, no ruined figure, just a ready-made boy. My nails dug into my palm. Matthew finally spoke like he meant it. Mom, stop. Don't you dare tell me to stop, she hissed. I'm trying to fix things. Ryan deserves a son. And I don't? Matthew said quietly. That silence after his question was loud. Then she did what she always did. Dismissed him. You have Emma. You can have another one. Lauren seems to pop them out whenever she wants. I felt something hot and sharp crawl up my throat. Matthew's voice went colder. You're talking about my son. She laughed once. Not kindly. Your son. Sure. That's what we're calling him now. And then, like she'd been holding this part back for the right moment, she lowered her voice. This is what we do, she said. We go to family court. Ryan files for paternity. The court orders a DNA test. Once he's legally established as the father, we push for custody. Matthew's breath hitched. Custody? He's never even met Ethan. Details, she snapped. That's what lawyers are for, and you're going to help. I'm not. Oh, yes, you are, she cut in. You'll testify that Lauren is unstable, that she yells, that she dumps the kids on her mother, that she's unfit. I actually blinked, because the audacity was almost impressive. Matthew's voice cracked. Lauren is a good mother. My mother-in-law made a dismissive noise. A good mother who sent her kids away today. See? I already know. Don't worry. I'll write it all down for you. What to say. How to say it. Courts love a calm, concerned husband. She was talking about me like I was an enemy nation, and about my child like he was a transferable asset. I finally moved. One step forward. Floorboard creaked. Silence. Then Matthew spoke, softer. Lauren? I rounded the corner. They were sitting on the couch like this was casual family bonding. His mom had her handbag beside her, like she'd settled in, like she belonged. Her face brightened the second she saw me. That fake smile snapped into place so fast it should have earned her an award. Oh, she said. Lauren, you're home. Get out, I said. She blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. Matthew stood up like his body had decided before his mind caught up. He looked wrecked, like someone had opened a trapdoor under everything he believed about his family. Lauren, I held up a hand, not at him, at her. You don't get to sit in my living room and plan to steal my child, I said. You don't get to call me unstable while you're actively plotting kidnapping with paperwork. Kidnapping? She scoffed. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic is showing up uninvited with luggage, I said. This is criminal. She shot Matthew a look that said, handle your wife. He didn't. Instead, he said, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, flat, firm, Mom, leave. Her mouth actually fell open. Matthew, now. She stood slowly, like she couldn't believe her feet were obeying. Then came the tantrum. She called me names. She called me a manipulator. She called me things I won't repeat because I'm trying to keep the story monetizable. She tried guilt. After everything I've done for you. Matthew didn't flinch. You've done nothing for me except make me feel small. That did it. She grabbed her bag, marched to the door, and turned back with the kind of smile you see right before someone says something unforgivable. You'll regret this, she said. I will still get that boy where he belongs. And then she left. The door shut. The apartment went still. Matthew stared at the spot she'd been standing like he expected her to reappear and say it was all a joke. It wasn't. He turned to me, eyes glassy. Lauren, did you know? I didn't even know she was this insane, I said, voice shaking. But no, I didn't know anything about your brother. I didn't know she'd been sitting on whatever this is. Matthew sank onto the couch like someone had unplugged him. Then he looked up, and I saw the switch flip. Not rage, not drama. Resolve. We're not waiting, he said. For what? For her to start calling people. For Ryan to show up. For CPS to knock on our door because my mother decided she's the Department of Family Services. He took his phone out, thumb moving fast. I'm calling a family law attorney in the morning, he said. And we're starting the step-parent adoption for Ethan. Official, legal, locked down. My heart slammed. Matthew, I've wanted to do it, he said quietly. For a long time. I didn't push because I thought... He swallowed. I thought my family would calm down. I thought my mom would eventually stop. He let out a humorless laugh. My mom doesn't stop. She escalates. I sat next to him. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press them between my knees. I'm sorry, he said, like he'd personally invited the devil to dinner. I don't care about your mom, I said. I care about Ethan. Matthew nodded. So do I, he said. And I'm done being the son who stays quiet. That night, I barely slept. Not because I was scared of court, because I finally understood something I'd been missing for years. My mother-in-law hadn't hated me for fun. She'd hated me because I was a threat to her carefully arranged lie. I didn't plan to be a single mom. I planned to be a normal person with normal problems, like choosing paint colors and forgetting to defrost chicken. Then I met Ryan. He showed up like a romance novel cliché. Nice car, perfect smile, accidental run-in that didn't feel accidental. He offered me a ride once. I declined. He parked anyway and walked me home like it was charming instead of calculated. He was charming. That's why it worked. He asked questions. He remembered details. He sent flowers just because. When you grow up with a father who treats kindness like weakness, attention feels like oxygen. I fell hard, and it wasn't until later, much later, that I noticed the pattern. He never took me to public places where someone might recognize him. He never introduced me to friends. He never spent holidays with me. He always had an excuse. Work, family, travel, stress. At the time, I told myself it meant he was busy. Now I know it meant he was hiding. When I got pregnant, the mask didn't slip. It shattered. He didn't panic. He didn't cry. He didn't even look surprised. He just said, very calmly, like he was discussing a parking ticket, "You're not having it." I stared at him. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." "I'm pregnant," I said. "It's not a group project." His jaw tightened. He didn't want a baby. He didn't want responsibility. He didn't want consequences. He wanted me quiet. When I said no, he tried persuasion, then intimidation, then the coldest silence I've ever felt from another human being. I left. I had a job, barely. A tiny apartment, barely. A mother who loved me, and a father who treated my existence like a personal insult. My boss let me work remotely part-time when I started showing. It wasn't some magical guaranteed thing, just a decent employer who didn't want to lose a worker. He promised my position would still be there when I came back. I held on to that promise like a life raft. Ethan was born on New Year's Eve. The nurses kept saying things like, "What a way to start the year." I kept thinking, please let me survive this year. My dad didn't take the news well. He did that thing where men disguise cruelty as comedy. So who's the lucky guy? Your boss? Or someone even worse? When I brought Ethan home, my dad started drinking harder, yelling more, telling me I'd shamed the family, threatening to throw me out. The police showed up twice because neighbors called. Nothing changed. Eventually, I did leave. Not because I wanted to, because staying meant raising my child inside a storm. My mom helped as much as she could. She also had one suggestion that sounded logical when you're exhausted and scared. "Maybe you should get married." she said one night. Not for love, for safety, for stability, for a roof that couldn't be ripped away on a drunk man's whim. And yes, that's humiliating to admit. But being a single mom with an infant doesn't come with pride privileges. It comes with survival math. Then I met Matthew. It wasn't instant fireworks. It was something better. Consistency. He didn't flinch at the stroller. He didn't ask where Ethan's father was like it was a criminal background check. He made a bottle without being asked. He showed up when he said he would. And when Ethan toddled over one day and grabbed Matthew's finger, Matthew didn't freeze. He smiled. Like it mattered. When we got married, my mother-in-law's hatred turned from passive to obsessive. She didn't just dislike me. She wanted me erased. I didn't know much about Ryan anymore. I hadn't seen him since the day I walked away. Matthew didn't talk about him either. Not really. Whenever Ryan's name came up, Matthew's shoulders would tighten, like his body remembered old bruises. His mom, on the other hand, talked about Ryan constantly. Ryan's promotions, Ryan's house, Ryan's vacations, Ryan's perfect marriage. It was always Ryan and Madison, said with this reverent tone, like Madison was proof their family was finally respectable. I assumed Madison was simply rich. Later, I learned she wasn't just rich. She was the CEO's daughter. The reason Ryan had a corner office. The reason he drove the car that made people nod approvingly. Madison wanted a baby. Ryan wanted an image. Those wants do not match. Madison tried everything. Specialists, clinics, Hope dressed up as appointments. When it didn't work, she started talking about adoption. That's what my mother-in-law couldn't tolerate. To her, adoption wasn't a family. It was a failure. So Madison compromised. She started volunteering. Not at an orphanage, because that's not really how it works here, but with a nonprofit that supported foster placements and families in crisis. Donation drives, supply bundles, reading programs. Sometimes she spent evenings at a children's hospital program, holding babies who needed comfort. She wanted to practice being needed. Her father hated it. Her husband mocked it. My mother-in-law tolerated it because she thought it was a phase. And then, one evening, Madison walked home after volunteering and saw a mom sitting near a playground with two little kids, Ethan and Emma. My kids. Madison told me later she stopped walking without realizing she'd stopped. Because it looked like something she'd been trying to reach for, something warm and ordinary and real. She approached and said something like, "Sorry, you're a beautiful family." I did what most moms do when a stranger compliments your children. I smiled politely while mentally reviewing self-defense options. Madison introduced herself. Ethan, who has never met a social boundary he respected, introduced himself too. "I'm Ethan," he said proudly. Madison froze for half a second. Because Ethan has Ryan's face. Not maybe. Not a little. Enough that if you see it once, you can't unsee it. And then Matthew walked up. Madison recognized him from photos. She hadn't met him before. She hadn't met me. She hadn't met our kids. Because every time she asked about Matthew's family, my mother-in-law changed the subject like it was a stain. Madison waved and made small talk. She left politely when her phone rang, and then she called her husband, Ryan. She told him she'd met Matthew and his wife and the kids near their building. There was a pause on the line, long enough to feel heavy. Ryan tried to sound normal. "Why were they there?" "I think they live there," Madison said, confused. "They were walking from daycare. Their son is adorable. He looks a lot like you, actually." Ryan laughed too fast. "That's because he's my nephew," he said. Madison, still hopeful, still kind, said, "We should all have dinner. A real family dinner. I want to know them. It's weird that we've never met." Ryan's stomach probably fell through the floor because what she was describing was his worst nightmare. His wife, his mother, his father-in-law, his ex, his child. All in one room, he tried to distract her. He tried to flirt. He tried to push the conversation off a cliff and drive away. And Madison, stubborn in a way people mistake for naive, kept talking about how nice it would be. Ryan didn't sleep that night. Neither did I, because while Madison was discovering a puzzle piece, my mother-in-law was packing her next move. The morning after my mother-in-law got kicked out, Matthew and I sat at our kitchen table with coffee we didn't drink. Ethan and Emma were still at my mom's. Safe. Matthew called a family law attorney, left a message, called another, booked a consult. Then the next thing happened, exactly like Matthew predicted. A knock at the door. Not my mother-in-law. A woman with a badge and a clipboard. A social worker. CPS. Someone had reported concerns about our household. Neglect, emotional instability, unsafe environment. The list sounded suspiciously like my mother-in-law's vocabulary. The social worker was polite, professional. She asked to see the kids. I told her they were at my mother's house. I offered the address. I offered my mom's phone number. I offered daycare records, pediatrician info, immunization schedules. Because here's the thing, if someone is trying to burn your life down with bureaucracy, you don't show them emotion. You show them binders. Matthew stood beside me the whole time, calm as a locked door. The social worker looked around, noted we had food, beds, toys, clean clothes, no bruises, no screaming. She asked gentle questions. I answered gently. When she left, she said, "I don't see anything concerning here, but I do recommend you document everything. Keep records. If there's a family conflict, sometimes these reports are retaliatory." I almost laughed. "Sometimes," she said. After she left, I sat down and put my head on the table. Matthew rested a hand on my back. "She's starting," he said. "Good," I said, voice muffled against the wood. "Because now I know what it looks like, and I can fight it." That day, our attorney explained the reality. Ryan could file a paternity action. A court could order genetic testing. But custody wasn't automatic, not even close. And the step-parent adoption, if we moved fast, would build a legal wall around Ethan that my mother-in-law couldn't climb with rumors alone. Then the attorney added the part nobody likes to hear, but everybody needs. "We'll have to formally notify Ryan," she said. "If he agrees, he can sign consent and we move forward. If he fights it, we'll have to prove he abandoned the child, no support, no relationship, no involvement, or the court won't terminate his rights." Translation. Paper was going to matter. A lot. "It won't be instant," the attorney said, "but we'll start. And we'll also talk about a protection order if she escalates physically." Physically. I didn't like that word. It sounded like a warning. A few days later, I opened my door and found Madison standing there. No makeup, hair pulled back, jeans and a hoodie. Not the glossy photo version, just a woman who looked like she hadn't slept. "Hi," she said carefully. "I'm Madison." Matthew stepped into view behind me. His posture changed immediately, protective, tense. Madison lifted her hands slightly, palms out. "I'm not here to take anyone," she said fast. "I swear, I need to understand what's happening." I stared at her, and something in my anger shifted. Because this woman looked like someone had pushed her into a story she didn't consent to. "Come in," I said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table that had become my war room. Madison's eyes flicked around the apartment like she was memorizing details, like she was trying to figure out if we were monsters. "I met you the other night," she said softly. "Your kids, Ethan and Emma." I nodded. "And then your mother-in-law showed up at my house," she continued, voice tightening. "She told me things." Matthew's jaw clenched. Madison swallowed. "She said you're unstable," she said. "That you're trying to trap my husband's family. That you're keeping Ethan away from his real father." I didn't interrupt. I let her say it. Because sometimes you need to hear the lie out loud to understand how bold it is. Madison's eyes filled. "I didn't believe her," she whispered. Not fully, but I started thinking about Ethan's face. And then I couldn't stop thinking. Matthew leaned forward slightly. Madison, he said carefully, did Ryan ever tell you he had a child? Her lips parted. She shook her head once. No, she said. He said he didn't want kids. Ever. There it was. I took a breath. Then I told her the truth. Not dramatically, not with crying, with facts. Ryan and I, years ago, pregnancy, his demand, my refusal, his disappearance. Madison listened like someone watching a floor collapse in slow motion. When I finished, she stared down at her hands. So he knew, she said. He knew this whole time. Yes, I said. And so did your mother-in-law. Madison's throat bobbed. I've spent years thinking I was the problem, she whispered. I've been to clinics. I've been told to be patient, to relax, to stop stressing. And he had a child already. Matthew spoke quietly. My mom wants Ethan because it's convenient, he said, not because she cares. Madison laughed once. It was small and broken. She told me she wanted a grandbaby so badly, Madison said. She acted like she was on my side. Matthew's expression didn't change. My mom is always on her side, he said. She just borrows other people's pain when it helps. Madison wiped her face. I need to talk to Ryan, she said. Matthew stood. I'll be here, he said. But maybe don't do it alone. Madison shook her head, already rising. I've been alone in this marriage for a while, she said. I just didn't know it. She left. And less than an hour later, Ryan showed up. Ryan's knock was firm, like he owned the hallway. Matthew looked through the peephole and went still. He's here, he said. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Matthew stepped into the hallway and pulled the door mostly closed behind him, blocking Ryan's view into the apartment. I stood a few feet back, heart pounding. Ryan's voice carried through the thin door like arrogance had its own speaker system. This is insane, Ryan said. What did you tell her? Matthew's voice was calm. Too calm. The truth. Ryan scoffed. You don't know the truth. You know what she claims. She didn't claim, Matthew said. Mom did. Mom sat on my couch and laid out a plan to take Ethan. There was a pause. Then Ryan's voice dropped. Look, Mom gets carried away. You know how she is. Matthew laughed once. Dark. I do. That's why you married up and left me to deal with her. Ryan's tone sharpened. Don't turn this into sibling therapy. Madison is upset. Her dad is upset. You have no idea what you've just done to my life. Matthew's voice stayed steady. You did it to your life, he said. You did it when you walked away from Lauren. You did it when you lied to your wife. Ryan exhaled. Then he did something that sounded almost like desperation. I can fix it, he said. I can talk to Madison. I can calm her down. You just need to not interfere. Matthew didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were quiet but sharp. Do you love her? Silence. Ryan didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said, She's my wife. Matthew's voice turned colder. If she's just your ladder, leave her alone, he said. But if you actually love her, fight for her. Apologize like you mean it, and stop letting Mom run your life. Ryan made a frustrated sound. You don't understand what I'm up against. Matthew finally snapped. Oh, I understand, he said. You're up against consequences. Another pause. Then Ryan said low, What about Ethan? Matthew's answer came without hesitation. He's my son. Ryan's voice tightened. Biologically, don't, Matthew warned. Don't you dare reduce him to biology when you've been absent his whole life. Ryan's breathing sounded heavier. Then softer, he said, "I never wanted kids." Matthew didn't soften. "Then you should have used protection," he said. Ryan fell silent. After a beat, he said, "Where is Madison?" Matthew's voice changed, protective, firm. "She's safe," he said. "And you're not seeing her tonight." Ryan swore under his breath. Then he left. Matthew came back inside and locked the door. I stared at him. His hands were shaking slightly. "You okay?" I asked. He exhaled. "No," he said. "But I'm done." That night, Madison texted me one sentence. "I'm at a friend's house. I filed for divorce." I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. Because the lie wasn't just crashing our family, it was taking down theirs too. The next day was supposed to be boring. Kids at daycare, work, pickup, dinner, normal. Madison was staying with a friend a few blocks from our building. Earlier that morning, she'd texted me, "If you're okay with it, I'd like to talk later, somewhere outside, somewhere public. I just need air." I told her we'd figure something out. My mom picked up Ethan and Emma and walked them back toward our building. The kids were laughing, talking about finger painting and snack time like the world wasn't on fire. They were 10 feet from the lobby when my mother-in-law stepped out from behind a parked car. My mom told me later it was like watching a trap spring. My mother-in-law grabbed Ethan's arm and yanked him toward her. "Come on," she snapped. "You're going where you belong." Ethan screamed. My mom grabbed his other hand. "Let go!" my mom shouted. "What are you doing?" Emma started crying so hard she hiccuped. My mother-in-law tried to peel Ethan away like he was tape. My mom looked around wildly. People were there, but people freeze. People pretend not to see. People hate getting involved. Then my mom did what you do when you're out of politeness and into survival. She yelled, "Help! She's trying to take my grandson!" A woman on a bench near the playground turned and ran. It was Madison. My mother-in-law saw her and instantly her face changed. That syrupy, affectionate mask slid back on. "Maddie!" she cried, like this was a sweet family reunion. "Oh, honey, thank God you're here." Madison didn't slow down. She stepped between them, eyes sharp. "Let go," she said. My mother-in-law laughed nervously. "I'm just—" "Let go," my mother-in-law's smile twitched. Madison's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Police are already on the way," she said. "And if you don't let him go, you're going to be explaining to an officer why you were physically pulling a screaming child off a sidewalk." My mother-in-law's fingers loosened. Ethan jerked free and clung to my mom, shaking. My mother-in-law turned on Madison, furious. "You ungrateful little—" Madison cut her off. "I filed for divorce," she said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "I packed Ryan's things. I dropped them at your place. He didn't even ask why, because he already knows." My mother-in-law's face went white, then red. Then she did what she always did when cornered. Blame. "This is Matthew and Lauren," she spit. "They poisoned you against us." Madison's eyes didn't leave hers. "No," she said. "You did." A patrol car rolled up. Then another. An officer approached. Another spoke with my mom. Another looked at Ethan, still trembling, and asked gentle questions. My mother-in-law started talking fast. Too fast. About being a grandmother. About family. About misunderstandings. The officer's expression didn't change. He asked one question that mattered. "Did you have permission to take the child?" My mother-in-law froze. Because she didn't. Because she'd never believed she needed it. That day ended with a report, a warning, and a very clear message from the system my mother-in-law thought she could manipulate. You don't get to snatch children in public and call it love. The aftermath wasn't cinematic. It was paperwork, protective order filing, attorney emails, witness statements, CPS follow-up closing the case as unfounded. Daycare being told who was authorized for pickup. Names, photos, passwords. We moved faster on the step-parent adoption. Our lawyer warned us Ryan might try something out of panic or spite, but Ryan didn't file. Not then, because Madison's father had lawyers too, and those lawyers were now looking at Ryan like he was a liability that needed removing. Madison told me later her father didn't yell. He didn't have to. He just said, very quietly, "I gave him a career. I can take it back." Ryan's perfect life started folding in on itself. My mother-in-law tried to keep fighting. She called. She texted. She left voicemails that sounded like threats wrapped in religious concern. Matthew blocked her. His father called once. Quiet, shaky. "I'm sorry," his dad said. "I didn't know it got this bad." Matthew's voice softened for the first time in weeks. "I know," he said. "You just let her run everything." His dad didn't deny it. "I miss the kids," he whispered. "You can see them," Matthew said. "But if you bring her, if you even hint at her plans, we're done." His dad agreed. And for the first time in Matthew's life, he set a boundary his mother couldn't bulldoze. As for my mother-in-law, her public grab for Ethan didn't just get her in trouble. It cracked her. She started spiraling, telling people we were stealing her grandson, that the courts were corrupt, that Madison was brainwashed. She showed up once at our building again, far enough away to be technically not violating the temporary order, but close enough to feel like a threat. Then she escalated. She screamed at a neighbor, threw something, started ranting in the lobby. Someone called 911. Not because they hated her, because she looked dangerous. That's what ends people like her, eventually. Not karma. A concerned stranger with a phone. She was taken for evaluation. Not sent away forever like a movie, but held, assessed, processed. And when the judge reviewed the reports, the attempted grab, the CPS misuse, the volatility, the court didn't treat her like a loving grandmother. It treated her like what she'd become, a risk. Months later, we stood in a courthouse hallway that smelled like disinfectant and tired decisions. Ethan clung to my hand, wearing a tiny button-down shirt my mom bought like this was picture day. Matthew looked like he was about to either cry or punch a wall, possibly both. When the judge signed the final order, it wasn't emotional in the room. No swelling music, no applause, just the scratch of a pen and the sound of something becoming official. Matthew became Ethan's legal father, on paper. In real life, he'd been that for years, through fevers, nightmares, daycare drop-offs, and the thousand small moments that build a family. But paper matters when people like my mother-in-law exist. We walked out. Ethan asked, "So, you're really my dad?" Matthew crouched down so he was eye level. "I've been your dad," he said. "Now the court agrees." Ethan nodded like that made sense. Then he smiled and ran ahead, dragging Emma behind him like she was a reluctant sidekick. I exhaled. Not relief. Something deeper. The feeling of finally locking a door you didn't realize had been open. Madison sent me a photo a few weeks later. A small apartment. Boxes. A coffee mug that said "start over" like it was trying too hard. Her message was simple. I thought I needed a baby to feel like a family. Turns out I just needed the truth. Ryan disappeared from our orbit after that. Lawyers handled what people like him always handle with lawyers, consequences they didn't expect. My mother-in-law never apologized. Of course she didn't. Apologies require self-awareness. She did, however, learn something. Not empathy, not humility. Just the hard American truth she couldn't bully her way around. Family isn't who claims you. Family is who protects you. And this time, that was us. Thanks for watching. If this story hit close to home, give it a like, subscribe for more, and drop a comment. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? I'd love to hear your perspective. On the day the court officially explained to me that I had nothing, my ex-husband was in a great mood. "Well, Brooks, Derek leaned against the wall by the courtroom doors. "Welcome to the real world. You're officially broke now, so go dig leftovers out of the dumpster. Scraps, all that." He was smiling big and honestly, the kind of smile people usually wear only on billboards and in hell. I nodded. "Thanks for the update, Derek. I never would have figured it out without you." The courtroom doors shut behind him, and I was left alone in the hallway. No shop, no money, alone hanging on me like Christmas lights, just without the lights. If this were a movie, I'd probably burst into tears, drop my bag, papers flying everywhere, and some handsome attorney would help me pick them up. But this wasn't a rom-com. This was Chicago. I just fixed the strap on my bag and walked down the stairs. I had 2 problems to solve: where to get money so I wouldn't end up on the street, and how not to strangle Derek right there in the parking lot. To be fair, I walked myself right into this. My name is Julia Brooks. Before I got married, I was the kind of person who always has a needle, thread, and a reasonably healthy sense of self-worth. I sewed. Dresses, school uniforms, bridal nightmares for suburban aunties, anything you could turn into money with an old but very alive singer machine. I lived in a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. My mom, Taylor, died 2 years before Derek showed up. After the funeral, I sold her old car, upgraded my equipment, rented a tiny basement space for a workshop, and worked. I wasn't rich, but I paid the electric bill myself and didn't borrow from anyone. By our family standards, that was a win. About my father, I knew very little. The name, none. The story, short. "He doesn't know and doesn't want to," my mom said once. "We'll manage on our own." We did. There were 2 of us, me and her stubbornness. Turned out stubbornness is mortal, and I, unfortunately, am not. I did not meet Derek in a library, obviously. He was changing the oil in my neighbor's car, came upstairs for the keys, and saw me pulling a disaster of a dress out of her shopping bag. "You're really going to wear that?" I asked my neighbor. "What's wrong with it?" She got offended. "Nothing," I said. "Just let me redo it before the fabric sues you." Derek laughed, loud and confident. "You a seamstress?" he asked. "I'm a sewing girl," I said, skipping the part about design and ideas. "I fix things." "Perfect," he said. "I'm a mechanic. I fix metal and people. We're basically a business alliance." I thought he was joking. Turned out he was warning me. He was a typical Chicago working-class guy. Hands in motor oil, broad shoulders, even broader dreams. He owned a small auto repair shop on the edge of town. And by owned, I mean rented bay, a couple of lifts, an old coffee machine, and a mountain of debt. "See this, Jew?" He waved at the rusty garage doors. "Couple of years from now, this'll be a chain. Derek's Auto. I can just feel it." I could feel my feet going numb from the cold, but his enthusiasm was warm and contagious. We started dating. Then I moved in with him. Then came the standard package. White dress, a quick ceremony at the courthouse downtown, a couple of witnesses whose last names I still don't know. At the wedding, Derek gave me flowers and this line: "Now we're a team, Jew. Everything shared. One life, one business." I got all misty-eyed like an idiot. What I should have asked was, whose name is the business actually under, Derek? Both of ours, or just yours? But I was busy holding flowers and believing. About 6 months into the marriage, he started nudging me toward the next level. "That little basement shop of yours is daycare," he said. "Sell it, sell your apartment, and we'll put everything into the shop. I'll put up a sign, we'll expand, get new equipment. You'll be in the office handling paperwork. Couple of years, we'll be printing money." "And my work? My clients?" I asked, a little unsure. "You'll still sew." He waved it off. "At night, at home, in front of the TV." He squinted at me. "What, you don't trust me?" Not trusting your husband 6 months into the marriage is like reading the instructions to a blender. It's right, but somehow embarrassing. I sold my apartment, sold the workshop, transferred the money to his account, because it was easier for the bank. A month later, a new sign went up over that gray concrete box. D&A Auto Repair. Why D&A? I asked. Derek and Associates. He winked. You're my main associate. I felt the first little tingle in the area where unicorn horns grow, but I kept quiet. Associate, I truly was. I did the books, answered phones, filled out forms, learned to hate the words tomorrow and discount. I sewed at night, at the corner of our house, which we also bought in his name, so the documents don't get messy. Derek smelled less and less like oil and more like expensive body spray. Pretty soon, the word Amber appeared in our lives. Who's that? I asked when I saw her name in payroll. New office manager, he said casually. You yourself said you can't keep up alone. I hadn't said that. I'd just once fallen asleep face first on an invoice. Amber was young, flexible, and deeply invested in the shop's success. In tight dresses and heels, obviously. She sat in the office, laughed at his jokes, and her bonus package clearly wasn't just financial. I tried not to be jealous. After all, Derek was my husband. He promised me one life, one business. Apparently, both of those could be shared with someone else. The moment I realized this wasn't just paranoia was the night he came home at 2 a.m. He smelled like cheap booze and someone else's perfume. You can recognize that even in the dark. Had a problem, client, he muttered, tripping over the threshold. Did the client have a name? I asked. Amber? He froze for half a second. You're gonna start again? Derek sighed. Jew, I'm working. For us. So you don't have to count every penny. I was already counting. Not pennies, anti-anxiety pills. I actually heard how bad it was from a cab driver. My name's Julia. I attract cab drivers like a magnet. That day I was coming back from the bank, where a woman in glasses politely explained to me that there was no way I was getting a small business loan to expand my sewing because I have... Surprise! No official income. So everything's in your husband's name? She asked. On paper. Yeah, I said. I walked out of the bank and saw a yellow cab. Old car, Illinois plates, the driver in a baseball cap with a tired but kind face. South side, please, I said. Oh, over by Derek's shop? He perked up. I drive people there all the time. I flinched. You know him? Well, I know who he is. The driver shrugged. Loud guy, always with that girl. You know, his manager, Amber. They make out at the doors, think no one can see them. He noticed how pale I'd gone. You work with him? You could say that, I said. I live with him. Silence dropped in the car, thick as exhaust. My name's Peter, he said a minute later. But everyone calls me Uncle Pete. If you ever need a ride somewhere, not home, just say so. I nodded, not trusting my voice. A week later, I decided to check. I got to the shop early before opening, used my own keys. The office door was locked from the inside, but I could hear laughter. Amber's laugh, sharp, high, like she was getting paid per giggle. I knocked. Silence. Then a rustle. Something hit the floor. Someone hissed. I opened the door. Short version. Yes, Amber was at work. Derek was too. Half their clothes were taking a break on the chair. I looked at them. They looked at me. Oh, Jew, Derek exhaled. This isn't what you think. No? I asked politely. Then by all means, keep going. I'll think of something else. Amber shrieked, grabbing a folder of invoices to cover herself. I closed the door, walked out to the bays, called Uncle Pete. Can you pick me up? I asked. Sure, he said. Home? I looked up at the D&A auto repair sign and finally saw what had been there from day one. Derek and Amber. No, I said. Not home. Uncle Pete had a small house on the edge of town, and a mom, Rita, with kind eyes and a habit of baking way too much. Room's free, she said, when Pete brought me in with one suitcase and a face not suitable for mirrors. If you want, stay. Pay when you can. I don't want to impose, I started. Sweetheart, Rita waved that away. My cat owns more luggage than you. Come in. They had a little backyard and a screened porch where an old table used to stand. I put my sewing machine there and taped an index card to the door. Custom sewing, Julia Brooks. The first dress I made was for a neighbor girl's prom, dirt cheap. The second, her friend. The third, her friend's friend. 3 months later, I had more orders than nights. I took a small loan from a local credit union. This time the money was in my name. I officially didn't really have a husband anymore anyway. The divorce dragged on like an old elastic waistband. Derek's lawyer was smooth, expensive, and very sure of himself. Mine was a tired legal aid attorney with the eyes of someone who's seen everything and is no longer impressed. Do you two co-own the business? I asked him before the hearing. On paper, no, he said. The LLC is registered only under Derek's name. But I gave him all the money, I almost shouted. My apartment, my workshop. Do you have a loan agreement? He asked calmly. No, I'm his wife. I trusted him. He just sighed heavily. Then it looks like a gift to your spouse. I'll try, but don't expect a miracle from this court. There was no miracle. There was Derek, though, as confident as ever. A couple of months before the divorce, he'd opened a new company in Amber's name, moved over the equipment, client base, and lease contract. The old company in his name was now an empty shell with debts. In court, his lawyer spread his hands. Your Honor, there's essentially no marital property to divide. Only the outstanding loan, which is solely under Mrs. Brooks' name. Mr. Brooks himself is barely staying afloat. I listened and thought that if hypocrisy could be bottled, this man would be a billionaire. The judge tapped the gavel. So, he said, Mrs. Brooks remains responsible for the loan. No divisible assets have been identified. Derek's smile just got wider. That's how we got to his little dumpster speech. I walked out of the courthouse. It was hot and humid. One of those Chicago days when the asphalt smells like rubber and the air smells like other people's sweat. I didn't want to go home. Home meant Uncle Pete and Rita and their cookies and sympathy. I was not ready for warm words. I wanted something quiet without people. I walked to the nearest park, sat on a bench, bought a flimsy plastic cup of coffee from the kiosk, the kind of coffee that hates everyone and is ready to burn each person personally. I watched kids run around, a dog chasing a frisbee, a woman in a business suit fighting with someone over the phone. I just started to think that life, sure, is a horrible thing, but at least the free circus around me. And then an older woman sat down on the other end of my bench. She was the kind of woman you spot instantly. Neat haircut, expensive suit, sensible flats that were clearly not from the clearance rack. Silk scarf. A bag my loan would be ashamed to stand next to. She exhaled and shut her eyes. Her hand trembled, and her purse almost slipped off her arm. You okay? I asked automatically. It's just the heat, she said. Her voice wavered. And age, very inconvenient combination. Want some water? I handed her my bottle. She took it, took a couple of sips. Thank you, she nodded. I'm Margaret. Julia, I said. Do you come here often? She asked. Today's my first day here as an unemployed person, I answered honestly. Margaret looked closer. She had that look of someone used to evaluating people as assets. Are you worth dealing with, or should I just call my lawyer? Rough day? She asked politely. Let's call it an optimization day, I said. The court just informed me I officially own nothing, except a loan. She snorted. Oh, believe me, sometimes nothing is a luxury. Having a pile of problems is a lot worse. She lifted the bottle to hand it back to me, and froze. My sleeve had slid up a bit, and the small birthmark on my wrist was visible, a tiny spot in the exact shape of a heart. Oh my God, Margaret whispered. That? What? I automatically covered my wrist. It's just a birthmark. She stared at it like I'd pulled a grenade out of my bag. Sorry, she said finally. It's just, my son had the same one, in the same place. I tried to smile. I have a few things in common with my ex-husband too, I said. For example, we used to have the same last name in the documents while sharing 0 assets. She didn't smile. She kept looking at my hand, then quietly asked, Your mother, what was her name? Taylor, I said. Taylor Brooks. Before that, she didn't like talking about her last name. She grew up in foster care. In which state? Illinois. Then she got a scholarship, went to college, met some rich kid, got pregnant. He freaked out. I shrugged. The usual. She walked away and didn't tell anyone anything. Margaret shut her eyes. Right there on that bench in a Chicago park. When she opened them, she looked 10 years older. And you never knew who your father was? She asked softly. Honestly, I didn't want to know, I said. If the guy once chose, I don't want this, why would I give him a second shot? She nodded, slowly. Then she pulled herself together, put on some kind of familiar businesswoman mask. Julia, you said you're unemployed? I'm a seamstress, I clarified. Right now, without a workshop. But the machine's alive, so I guess I am too. Do you give out business cards? I snorted. I ran out of cards, but I do have a pen and a receipt. I wrote my name and number on the back of the kiosk receipt and handed it to her. Here, in case your wardrobe also needs optimizing. Margaret took the scrap of paper carefully with 2 fingers, like it was thin ice. Thank you, Julia, she said. I may really need your help. I found out who she was a couple of days later. My phone rang just as I was fixing a zipper on a dress, and Rita's cat was trying to steal my pins. Ms. Brooks? A man's voice asked. This is the secretary for Ms. Margaret Harlow. She'd like to invite you over for a fitting. I looked around at my makeshift porch studio and at the dress hanging above the microwave. Ms. Harlow is who? I asked carefully. Harlow Group. Real estate construction. The voice clearly assumed that not knowing them in Chicago is like not knowing it snows in winter. Would tomorrow at 3 work for you? I glanced out the window. Uncle Pete was bent over his car again. 3 works, I said. Margaret Harlow's mansion sat in one of those quiet, 2-green neighborhoods where the grass is trimmed better than the bangs I cut. At the gate, a security guard named Sam and a huge dog that looked like a small bus met me. He doesn't bite? I checked as the dog sniffed my bag. Only if you're the IRS, Sam said dryly. His name's Kraken. Perfect. I'm broke. And the rich lady's dog is named after a sea monster. The symbolism writes itself. Inside, the house looked the way heaven probably looks for interior designers. High ceilings, art, rugs, chandeliers, staircases designed to make you feel underdressed. Margaret was waiting in the living room. Different suit, different scarf, same eyes. Julia, she nodded. Thank you for coming. There was a dress on the coffee table. Expensive fabric, terrible cut. Rich people have this weird habit of cheaping out on the things they wear all the time. I want you to save it, Margaret said. It's very dear to my heart, much dearer than the designer who ruined it. We discussed darts, length, sleeves. I tried to sound like a professional, not like a girl who'd just stepped into a place where a square foot of floor costs more than my old apartment. You'll need a fitting, I said. We can do it now or another day. Now, she decided. The sooner the better. She went into the next room to change. I stayed, looking over the shelves full of framed photos. That's when I saw my mom. Taylor was looking at me from a silver frame. Young, in a simple dress, with half a smile. Background, a fancy garden that definitely wasn't our south side. I nearly dropped the pins. Where did you get her photo? I asked when Margaret came back into the room wearing the dress. She stopped and followed my gaze. Her face went as white as the fabric I was afraid to ruin. How do you know this girl? She asked quietly. That's my mom, I said. Taylor Brooks. Well, she wasn't Brooks yet back then. I looked up. And you? Margaret sank into the nearest armchair like someone had just removed all her bones. That was a long time ago, she whispered. A very long time ago. She went silent. So did I. The dress hung between us like a surrender flag. Sit down, Julia, Margaret said at last. We need to talk. And we both might have to apologize to people who aren't here anymore. The story she told me sounded like a bad soap opera, but it was my life from before I was born, so I had to sit through it. Years ago, Margaret had one son, Tyler. Only child, only heir to Harlow Group. I built this business myself, she said, and I wanted him to never know what foster care is, or cheap motels, or expired food, and of course he fell in love with a girl who grew up in all of that. Taylor came into their house as a project, a program for supporting kids aging out of foster care. Margaret offered her a room, a job as a helper, and a chance. On her own terms, obviously. She was quiet, smart, stubborn, Margaret said. And naturally, Tyler fell for her immediately. They both thought I didn't notice anything. She noticed everything, and she did not like it. I saw her as a threat, Margaret went on. I thought she hesitated. That she was a gold digger, that she wanted his last name, not him. I'd heard this story before, from my mom, only from the other side. The night Taylor came to her and said she was pregnant, Margaret made a choice. It was summer. Storm, she said, staring off somewhere. I threw her out, with her bags, told her to disappear and never even think of my son again. Tyler was at some off-site event. I intercepted him, lied that she used him. He tried to find her, but... She sighed. He didn't make it in time. My mom described that night differently. Thunder, rain, a suitcase, a door slamming in her face. A few months later, Tyler died in a car accident. End of the direct Harlow line. I thought I had time to fix it, Margaret said quietly. God turned out to be busy with other things. Taylor left, changed her last name, moved, had me. Never crossed paths with the Harlow world again. Margaret spent years looking for the child, paid private investigators, met girls with photos and tragic stories. Each one wanted a chance, or money. None of them were your mother, Margaret said. But I kept looking, until one day, I decided maybe this was punishment, for that night. She glanced at my birthmark, at the photo, at me. And then I met a girl in the park who looked just like Taylor in her 20s, with the same birthmark, and I heard her name. I said nothing. Sometimes words are too cheap a tool. Julia, Margaret said finally. If you want to walk out right now, walk. You don't owe me anything. I made way too many wrong choices to have the right to another chance. So, I said slowly, you threw my pregnant mother out into the street. She grew up in foster care, killed herself working just to survive, then dragged me up alone. Your son, my father, I guess, died without ever knowing I exist. Yes, Margaret said. That's about right. And all this time you've been searching for me, sometimes handing money to scammers? Yes, I exhaled. You know, if someone told me this story in a Walmart parking lot, I'd assume it's a scam. I can do a DNA test, she said quietly. If you want. I looked at my mom's photo, at my reflection in the glass, at my birthmark. Let's do it, I said. Not because I don't believe you. I just want at least one thing in this story to be correct on paper. The DNA test took a week and gave us what was already obvious, 99.99% match. Margaret Harlow was my biological grandmother. Her son Tyler, my father. My life wasn't a random glitch. It was the result of one very specific scandal. I'm sorry, she said when we got the results. I can't bring your mother back. I can't give you your father, but I can at least not make the same mistakes again. I'm afraid repeating them would be tough, I said. I'm not pregnant by your son. He's dead. And you're not the woman who kicks pregnant girls out into the rain anymore. She gave a small, sad smile. I'm still that woman, Julia. I just can't afford rain like that anymore. She did something I didn't expect. I want you in Harlow Group, Margaret said. Not as some girl I'm helping, as my heir and partner. You're talented, smart, and you know how to work. That's first. Second, I never wanted my business to go to strangers. She looked me over carefully. And third, honestly, it pisses me off that my granddaughter is stuck with a loan because she trusted an idiot. That at least I can fix. Within a month, my loan was paid off. Within 3, I had a small but very real studio in a good neighborhood with a sign, Julia Brooks Atelier, by Harlow Group. 6 months later, I was sitting in conference rooms with lawyers and accountants, hearing words like share, equity, valuation, and understanding at least half. Margaret was not some sentimental cereal commercial grandma. Don't think I'm doing you a favor, she said. You're useful to me too. Otherwise, all this goes to people who don't even know which end of a needle is sharp. That was her weird version of love. I was learning to take it. Alex came along almost casually. This is Alex. Margaret introduced him at one meeting. An investor, and possibly the person who'll teach you not to be afraid of numbers. He wasn't a mechanic, already a plus. He didn't promise me one life, one business. He showed me spreadsheets and asked questions that didn't make me cry. They made me want to Google things. We worked together, then we started getting coffee. Then we stopped pretending it was just work. I can't promise I'll never disappoint you, Alex said bluntly. But I can promise that if I decide to act like an ass, I'll tell you first, and then my lawyer. Best marriage proposal I'd ever heard. We had a simple wedding, no fireworks, a small party with people who actually know my middle name. A year later, we had a son. What do we call him? Alex asked, while I, wrecked and happy, held a tiny bundle. I looked over at Margaret. She was standing by the hospital window, gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Tyler, I said. Let at least one Tyler in this family grow up knowing he has a dad who didn't run. Margaret turned away, pretending to watch the parking lot. Really, she was watching her mistakes melt away in that tiny pink face. I didn't think about Derek much. Almost. Bits of news floated by on their own. Chicago's big, but rumors travel fast. Amber opened her own shop near the old one. Derek fought with his partners. They're in trouble with the IRS. I think Amber left him for some lawyer. I listened, then went back to my life. I sewed. I negotiated. I drew up growth plans with Alex. Evenings I fed Tyler, and on Sundays I'd go with Margaret to the cemetery, to her son's grave, my father's, the man I never knew but somehow still ended up looking like. He was stubborn, Margaret said once, straightening flowers. Like you, and like your mother. Perfect, I said. So Tyler had literally no chance of being born easy. We laughed, sometimes for real. 3 years after that court day when they officially promoted me to broke, I was standing behind the bar in our own small restaurant. Yeah, a restaurant. Alex had said one day, "If we've already dressed half the city, let's at least feed the neighborhood." We found an old corner space, gutted it, opened a cozy place selling simple food and good wine. In one corner we had a glass case with a couple of my dresses. Margaret insisted, "The world needs to see who the real star is here." Tyler sat in his high chair, gnawing on a piece of white bread and dropping it on his lap every few minutes. I was wiping the counter when the door opened and a man walked in who I once thought was my team. Derek looked bad. The guy who taught me not to count every penny was now clearly counting coins before walking in somewhere. Wrinkled jacket, worn-out shoes, dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept or hadn't looked at himself in a mirror in a long time. He froze when he saw the sign inside. Julia Brooks, co-owner. "Well, hey, Jew," he said, coming up to the bar. His voice was hoarse, like something out of an old movie. "Heard you made it." "Hey, Derek," I said. "Heard you didn't." He tried to smirk, but it came out crooked. "Listen, I need to talk to you," he started. "Can I sit?" "It's a free country," I said. "Tables, too." We sat. Tyler loudly hiccuped at that exact moment. Derek flinched. "You have a kid," he said, like I'd personally broken some universal schedule. "Crazy, right?" I said. "People sometimes continue living even after their ex-husbands predict careers out by the dumpster." We sat in silence for a second. Outside, someone laughed and ordered coffee. Inside, Kraken, our restaurant dog, long story. Margaret's dog had puppies. We got one with the personality of a bouncer. Quietly sniffed Derek's pant leg. "Julia, please," Derek whispered. "I know I was a jerk. I get it. But we were a family. You don't really want to see me completely in the gutter, do you?" I looked at him, at the man who once convinced me to sell everything and put it all in his name, who'd stood in that courthouse hallway cheering for my bankruptcy. "What do you want, Derek?" I asked. "Alone. Help. A chance. I'll bounce back. Pay you back," he faltered. "Or at least not starve to death." Tyler chose that moment to drop another chunk of bread on the floor. Derek jumped again. "You named him Tyler," he said, like the universe had really gone off script. I shrugged. "We have a family tradition of making mistakes and then correcting them," I said. "He's part of the correction." We went quiet again. Kraken scooped up the fallen bread, then settled down by my feet, still eyeing Derek thoughtfully. "Julia, come on," Derek tried again. "You're rich now. You've got a restaurant, your millionaire grandma, your investor. You really can't help your ex-husband out?" That was the moment the universe had probably been working toward this whole ridiculous time. The man who once told me to go eat out of dumpsters was now begging me for crumbs. I looked at Tyler, at his little hands, at the crumbs on the table, at Kraken, faithfully catching every piece that hit the floor. "You know, Derek," I said quietly, "when you stood in that courthouse hallway and explained I'd be digging for scraps, you weren't completely wrong." He looked up at me. "Yeah, those first couple of months were rough, but then I realized something. The dumpster wasn't me. It's the people who send others there." I leaned a bit closer. I'm not your bank, Derek. I'm not a charity. I'm the woman who trusted you once and paid way too high a price for it. I'm not paying twice. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. I stood up. If you want food, the menu's at the bar. Prices are for people who pay for themselves. If you want to talk about life, find a therapist. If you want money, I shrugged. Try out back. There's a dumpster. Maybe you'll have better luck with it than I did that day. Kraken gave a soft bark, like he agreed. I picked Tyler up. He snuggled into my neck, warm and heavy. Alex waved at me from the end of the bar, just finishing a call with a supplier. Everything okay? He asked when I walked over. Yeah, I said. The past tried to take out a loan. I declined. He smiled. Margaret, sitting at a corner table with a glass of white, looked up and gave me the slightest nod. I walked past Derek without looking back. This time, no man was following me, holding car keys and promises of one life, one business. I already had my own life, my own business, my own kid, and not a single dumpster on my way. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment. See you in the next video.